are recording. This is the first Kubernetes SIG network of 2021, or January 7th. And I think Tim's gonna kick us off.
I will. If you want to give me share, let me see if I can do it.
You should already have it.
All right. Application
That's
window.
my other New Year's resolution, is to never have to do that reactively again.
All right. Can you guys see me? You got my screen? Yes?
Yep.
I got it.
All right. So I loaded up today. There were 31 issues. They get old pretty quickly, which is good news. I opened up the first 20. I went through a few and were able to close them out or address them myself. The rest, let's go through. Many of these are test flakes, and so we're just going to need people to sign up to see if we can understand what's happening and how we can fix them. So asking for volunteers. Number one, Kubernetes, poll Kubernetes EDE, Ubuntu GCE network policies. Flaked. So it looks like network policies flaky.
That fix should merge soon. It's just a concurrency thing. Reduce the concurrency to 3.
So we can accept it.
Yeah, it's LGTM. It's just we're waiting for the job to merge it, I think.
All right, I'm going to mark it as accepted. Awesome. This one I looked at looks like a feature request. Arbitrary FQDN as hostname inside a pod. This was just a couple days old.
I feel like somebody filed this 6 months ago and you told them to write a KEP, and possibly they even did. So
that was different in that they wanted, that's true. I thought that too, and I was ready to close this. They wanted, give me the full Kubernetes style hostname as my hostname, or FQDN as my hostname. So, service.namespace.cluster.local as my, if I say hostname, show me that. So that's the KEP that got implemented. This is entirely different. They want complete arbitrary control over what shows up as hostname, more like Docker. So I read this over. I would encourage a few people to read this over, and I would love some feedback. My feeling on it is we've tried to be really rigid to give people the best, most consistent experience. And I've heard this come up enough times that I'm almost ready to just give in on it and say, if you break your own pods, it's your own pods, right? Like, I'm not sure that there's actually any negative implications of letting people set this for themselves. It doesn't mean we're going to put random thing in DNS. It just means that when they run hostname, they'll get whatever they wanted to see there, right? So I would like, if anybody has thoughts about that, to take a look at this one. So actually, I'll probably just assign it to myself. Sorry,
yeah, Tim, I was reading this one and I was thinking, like, yes, workarounds for poorly designed older software feel kludgy, but at the same time, like, if it removes an obstacle from people and it still follows the principle of least surprise, where it's not going to arbitrarily change what hostname does unless someone tries to, then I'm not sure I see a lot of harm here.
Yeah, the only harm I see is we have to think through the intersection of this, because obviously we're not going to do breaking changes to the API. So how does this intersect with the other hostname based features we have, right? Because now we have, sorry, go ahead.
We should also bring Windows to this discussion.
That is a great point.
It's Kerberos, and that's basically the lifeline of Active Directory. So I'm not sure who's from the Windows side. I can go find out.
Well, the specific example they're talking about is a piece of Kerberos software that looks at the host name, but I mean, the feature in general is not really Kerberos specific.
Yeah, but if you want to, the reason I brought this up is if you want to test, let's say you have some software that tests the Windows thing with ED and all the other shenanigans, then you probably need this feature.
Yep. So my feeling is, like, as the ultimate escape hatch, this probably seems okay. Cal, I assigned you also. Anybody else who wants to, feel free to jump on this one. I'm going to leave it open for myself to have a read through and give some comments on later. Next, we have a request for a network policy test case for a kept target namespace default label.
Yeah, this is for in case there's some other feature that goes into this, kind of anticipating adding those default labels. I think Jay was working on this a little bit more.
Yeah, you can assign that to me. We can do that. That's for the API, the namespace default kept thing that we have in place. It's just
okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Maybe we can follow up on the state of that kept after we're done with triage.
Okay.
Okay. Next, IPVS kube proxy cannot delete old endpoints. Rebooting a master. Lars assigned himself.
The API guys assigned it, triage. I'm not sure if this is a problem in kubeproxy.
I haven't read this one yet. So
the guy has two masters, reboots one and says that it has only one endpoint. But once the new master reboots it, he should have two. And
okay. Oh, somebody, Federico, accepted it just 20 minutes ago. So it sounds like maybe it's an API machinery problem and not a us problem.
I will let I think that the conclusion from the guy that opened the issue is not clear to me, because he says that it happens 50% of the times. I really don't know if you can assign to me or to Lars and we can follow up with him. But I think that right now, if API machinery is looking into it.
Okay. Well, why don't we just leave this and we'll circle back to it next time then. If nothing happens in the meantime, I'll add you to it. But if nothing happens, then we can talk with the API machinery. All right. Organize new network policy tests for ingress, egress, allow block combinations for various criteria.
You can.
Yeah, this was another one where we found a really interesting test case, and I think Nils added that in. And then we realized that there's a little bit of work that we could do to just kind of make these tests a lot more clear in how we organize them.
Okay.
I guess
just accept it.
Yeah, we can accept that. Matt, I guess when we file those, you can just triage accept those, I think, now that you're a member, since you're.
Oh, okay, cool. Yep.
Yeah, I was going to say that in general. Thanks for bringing that up. For the regulars here who are filing things that we know are real, you can go ahead and triage accept them yourself.
Cool. Sounds good.
I certainly don't want to discourage people from filing issues, but we don't need to triage issues that we know are bugs or feature requests or whatever. Add the ability to target an ingress class controller in a specific namespace. So I read this one over and commented on it earlier. I don't really understand what they're asking for. It sounded like they've still got an ingress class, which is a non-namespaced resource, but they want to reference a namespaced parameter object. I don't really understand why. So I followed up on this. I thought
you can assign me as well. This is something like I talked with Alejandro a little bit about this as well. Or something like that seems similar for Nginx Ingress. I know some users deploy Ingress controllers in different namespaces with, this Ingress should be provisioned by this. And that used to be their concept of Ingress class. But now Ingress class, it's a little less clear, like what does controller name mean? Should a controller own, like if you have multiple instances of the Nginx Ingress controller, how do you interpret that? There's some ambiguity in the API spec around this. So if that's where they're going with this, I can follow up a bit more.
Okay. All right. Initially I thought maybe it was asking for like the ability to deploy an ingress controller in my own namespace and create my own classes and then use those classes in my own namespace, like totally self-determined, which is vaguely interesting. I don't really understand this sort of half step. So we can, I commented on there, but you feel free to jump in also. Kube proxy TCP timeout for close wait. Default value is 60 minutes, not 60 seconds. And there's history here. There's an old bug in the 30,000 range that we encountered, and we bumped the timeout from 60 seconds to 60 minutes. When you do the math on any high QPS connection like this, it's obviously not going to work. Like, you're going to have huge amounts of contract records. I think maybe we should go back and revisit that old 30,000 class bug. It was around GCE's metadata server, and it not closing it. Like it was half closed, and for some reason it wasn't closing the other end of the connection. And so it's a fun read, and it was a fun. I remember the bug. It was a really fun one to understand. But I kind of agree with the bug reporter here. 60 minutes feels egregious. So I tagged Bowie on it. I don't know if Bowie's here.
Bowie's on vacation, so.
Oh, Minhan spoke up. Guess he gets assigned.
Yeah, just assigned it to me.
Yeah, my first thought was, well, you could just bump up the number of contract records, but honestly, I don't understand exactly in this case why they're not, like, why is the Nginx tests that they're running in leaving connections in half open state also, or half closed state, I guess. But still, at 60 seconds, that seems ridiculous. Okay, Red Hat 8, install Kubernetes that can't communicate between pod IPs. There's a lot of, there's a lot of people looking at this. It looks like it's a firewall D thing. I have zero context on what's going on within Red Hat and firewall D.
Assign this one to me, Casey.
I know your voice.
Okay.
You got it.
Just like to be safe.
GCE serial kubedns jobs are failing due to disruptive tests.
Yeah, it seems that with the new version, some new tests were added and they are failing, but Promise is.
So Pavitra's on it. I don't know if you're here, Pavitra, but I'm going to assign you to it. Excellent. Although it sounds like it's a real bug, so I'm going to accept it also, right? Okay. SIG network granular check. Services should update node port. Flaky. Okay. So should we?
And I will.
You want to? Okay. Cool.
Because this fails sometimes once in 20 runs, and
those are the best.
For sure.
Using SIGNet dial from node and other networking utils for SIG Windows tests. Jay, this is the one that made me think you should probably just triage accepted your own issues. Oh, you did.
Oh yeah, I felt, I was like, oh, I got to start doing that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we don't need to sign it. Okay. So now we're into the November bugs. How are we on time? We're at time. So let's just stop here. There are a bunch of bugs, about 12 bugs that are older than December, that we can probably go through and either age out some of them or ping these bugs. So I would ask everybody, please, if you volunteered for triage at some point in the last 3 months, look at issues that are assigned to you. And if you're still on needs triage issues, ping them or close them. And with that, I guess I'm done.
Tim, before we move away, can we talk real quick about the one that was so new that it didn't make it to your list? I dropped a link in the notes.
Sure. Let me share again.
Or we can just all click on it and look at it, whichever.
Kubernetes service bug.
I saw that even during this meeting, some folks were commenting on it, and I just want to make sure.
That's this one, 13 hours ago.
Yeah, 97797.
Yeah.
For some reason, I can't see your screen now.
Who's going to get 100K? We start filing bugs. We've got just a few more to go.
Yeah, your screen disappeared though, Tim.
Oh, interesting.
It's okay. We don't need your screen if we're just all looking at 97797.
But I thought I shared it again. Yes, no? It says I'm sharing.
It's being computers.
It's
cool.
just
all right, well, I'll just stop then. 97797. So to create a Kubernetes service, the type is node port, which has been created successfully. Then I change the type to cluster IP. When I apply it again, the error is reported as follows. So this sounds like
it was just like a validation problem.
Did your batch merge? Didn't you have a batch for this? So
yeah, this is the thing that we were arguing about in November, December, right, Cal? The auto clearing of node ports.
Yes.
So almost certainly this is fixed in master and not in whatever they're on 18. So
No.
I'll take this one.
Yeah.
I'll take this one. I will respond and link them to the appropriate PR. Cool. Anybody else have any triage-ish stuff they want to talk about? All right.
Cool. Thanks, Tim. Next item was about validation on service load balancer IPs. I think that was Rob and sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
That's okay. So I'll just quickly say hi because I think this is the first time I've spoken at this meeting. My name is Swetha. I also work at Google with Rob on the same team. So quickly to kind of describe what those fields are on the service spec, there's a couple of load balancer IP or load balancer source range fields that allow users to add white space accidentally into their into the field, which eventually fails. I don't think there might be a couple of ones for the load balancer source range where it's been trimmed somewhere along the process. But essentially, there is no validation that trims that white space or reports an error. And since this kind of gets into an issue of backwards compatibility, we're wondering if there is support for tightening the validation, mostly because if this is wrong, like when a user specifies they're going to run into an error eventually. So we have two approaches: being able to return an error a little bit quicker, saying there is extra white space, or doing it proactively and just trimming it earlier. And we wanted to kind of see what people think about that.
So
and Rob,
these values are eventually used by whoever implements the load balancer, right? So
yeah.
cloud or the bare metal load balancer that's out there. And whatever they do, they will have to trim the white space, right? They cannot use the array like Cider with a white space somewhere before or after. So in my own view, if we started either auto trimming, so as we get the data, we trim and validate, or we just validate, there shouldn't be a problem downstream, but there might be a problem facing users who were used to insert a Cider with a space at the end. So if we are to do something, I think we should trim and validate, like auto trim the values that come in and just validate them. That's
but where not to trim white space off, like
trim, yeah.
But where do you want to trim?
The trailing or the non-trailing, not in the middle, basically. Any space before or after.
In the API server. Because
Oh,
I don't think that they are going to allow you to trim fields in.
Yeah,
oh yeah.
that's the problem we have right now. So what we've done right now is we've done some kind of intermittent patches. So kubeproxy consumes some of these fields. So we've updated that to trim white space before it processes these values. But it feels like that's not a complete solution because we don't want an API where everyone has to trim a value before they use it. So is there a way we can trim it before everyone has to use this value? I don't know.
With an admission
I can
controller,
tell you
maybe.
what API machinery won't like me. Man, they already don't like me. So I can tell you what we're doing.
So, like as a general principle, we don't mutate user input, right? And that's fine. Now, this is a pretty fringe definition of mutate, where I could make an argument that, trailing for these specific fields, trimming leading and trailing white space is always safe. There is no syntax for an IP or a CIDR that includes white space, right? So it should always be safe to do this. That doesn't mean that it's precedented. And so I don't know how somebody like Liggett would feel about opening that can of worms. Because honestly, what would stop us from doing this for all API fields? Why wouldn't you want to trim and remove white space from every single API field? Or every single, I don't know. And then there's the where to do it, right? Ideally, we would do it in one place sort of generically. Practically, there isn't such a place. And so we would have to do it either in defaulting or in the REST stack somewhere.
Strategy, man. Always a strategy. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, strategy has the advantage of being ignoring versions, right? Yeah. Bridget says may violate the principle of least surprise. Possibly. That said, if we were to start enforcing it at the API level and say, hey, you fed me an IP address that has a white space at the end, we will almost certainly break somebody who was doing that and it was just working before, right? Because we worked around it partially in kubeproxy or because whatever. And if we start tightening that, it will be a breaking change. So I think just thinking out loud, the preponderance of weight would lie on the trimming white space quietly and transparently is probably the least evil thing we can do.
Yeah, I think most consumers of this API are already trimming white space, but it's impossible to find every use case. And we've already run into now 2 relatively significant bugs where white space wasn't being trimmed. And I'd hate to think there are more out there, right?
How is white space making its way in? Like, do we understand that?
It's a list of
somebody, yeah, I mean, it's a typo in the YAML manifest. That's what we've seen in the bugs that are linked.
If I have a YAML, if I put an IP address with trailing space, will it preserve the space? I thought YAML would automatically do that at the beginning, unless
if you quote string.
Value.
Yeah, so if you have quoted string and you have a space in it, like bad on
That's
you.
what's happening. Yes. Yeah.
But we've always allowed it. So
yeah.
On the other hand, if we do it this way and we auto trim it, then we will create an apply loop where apply will repeatedly say, oh, this isn't what I wanted you to apply. It has a space in it. Let me apply a new version. We would accept it, trim it, make the application, and then apply would come back and say, oh, this isn't what I expected you to have. Let me do it again. So I think we should talk with API machinery folks, because maybe I'm misunderstanding how the apply loop would work, but I bet I'm not. Is there an open bug or something on this?
I think the first link in the agenda is an open bug right now.
Okay, can you, the first link, just back a little bit.
96909.
I will open it up, and after this call, I will tag a few people from API Machinery, and we keep the discussion going there. It may be that the only winning move is not to play.
It just hit me that this means that this data is not validated anywhere, right?
No, I think when you feed it to net parse IP, it ignores whitespace. So that, and part of our validation isn't it feeding it to parse IP, or maybe we're allowing whitespace in? It's a good question.
It depends on the implementation, and because this is a cloud provider thing, it does vary among the different implementations here.
Cool. All right. Well, let's carry the discussion in that bug. It may be that we simply don't have a good answer here. Maybe we use the API warnings mechanism to send back a warning that says, hey, we're accepting this, but just so you know, you've got trailing white space in a field that really doesn't allow it. I've been looking for an excuse to use that stuff anyway. Okay. Sweta and Rob, do you have more you wanted to go through?
No, I think that covers it.
Cool. Thanks, guys. The next item was to check in on the state of a CAP from 2014, I assume. That is meant to be for building a new kube proxy.
Yep. So sharing a window. So for those who don't know yet, the idea was to split the proxy in two parts. One part with Kubernetes business logic, another part with the ability to apply that logic like IP tables or IPVS are already doing. So I started on that idea and had some input and some discussions, and this seems to go to a new proxy that would be split with a part in the cluster that will serve an API to simplified clients. And there's a discussion about using XDS tools to move data around that. So for the current state of what I did in this project, for now, there's nothing about XDS, but I did that split in parts. So you have proxy stuff that's working with, that's connecting with your cluster as the current proxy does. And this part then allows to plug multiple backends to it. So you just have the ability to have a simplified model and to serve multiple clients from only one connection to the API server. I've done a part using NFT and NFTable. And the good thing with the split of this API is that it allows you to debug things also more easily. So, for instance, I have a fake proxy that I need to stop the previous one. A fake proxy that allows me to feed fake data to this. It's written from a YAML file, but just for presentation purpose. And there are two things. So I can connect and have my node have its node model that is simplified and only limited to what the node needs to see. And there's the global log that's intended to be able to replicate the proxy state around the clusters for more complex cases on bigger clusters. So this will basically allow to have kubeproxy relays. And everything is doing diff sending. So every time I change something, I only receive a diff. So here I just added a node. So fake proxy sees that. And on the global part, the replication is done. And for the node, it doesn't change anything. So I can continue with that and add some services. So this time with the service, I have on the local part a node that's getting its service. I can change the service to add external IPs. And every time I have a diff, so you have minus and plus here, and I can add endpoints to that node, and it will start to have its endpoints coming in. And that's a basic presentation of what I have now. If you want to see the simplified state for the node, it's just having one service with a cluster IP, some external IPs, and 2 backends. And all of that is going through diff, and it works the same way if a proxy was coming from a real server, which is something I can do easily by just starting my kubeproxy 2 instead, and it will feed with the data from the real from a real server, which is not the same state. That's it.
So I think this is super cool. Obviously, we've talked about this before. What I want to think about, I guess, is how do we proceed? If we want to build, let's assume that we want to use this, right? And I think we still have to prove it and do some benchmarks and trials, but let's assume that those will all be successful. How do we want to proceed on this in an incremental fashion that we can actually integrate this into the code base in a way that people can consume?
Yeah, it can be external. It can be maybe not in the, I mean, the idea is to split the Kubernetes project anyway. So let's start by not putting it in the main repo. And what I've done on the clusters I've been testing is that I just put some labels on my nodes, and with basically kubeproxy v1 and v2. And the daemon set is using that as a node selector, and I can incrementally deploy the proxy on the clusters. So what I think we need the most is now is testing and user input. But
so
I have to agree on that statement. I don't think we should integrate the code. I think it should be a standalone somewhere else, and it gets built and released as part of the entire release cadence that we have. Having it outside the code will simplify a lot of things, and it can be as simple as, oh hey, you have this default implementation and this alternative implementation, and then this can be experimental, follows the beta, alpha, and all of that stuff. And then once it's ready, we can just switch off the old one.
So we have, in general, I agree, and I've advocated before for trying to get kubeproxy out of tree. So agreement in general on that. There's still the distinction between, do we move it out of tree or do we move it to staging? Because there's some value to being able to make atomic changes across them, but there's also some accidental couplings that happen that we may want to just discourage from the beginning, right? And in terms of getting incremental adoption, I know that like all the XDS stuff is very much up in the air as to whether we want this actual protocol to be XDS or not. I think there's a lot of good reasons to do so, but until we've done it, we can't really say whether it was a bad idea or not. Would it make sense to make this available as a library also, so that I could build a monolithic kube proxy replacement that links this as a library and calls out into my Go-based plugin, not a plugin in a plugin sense, but like an interface, right? I feed you an interface and you call out to me. And then we could say like, it's literally a drop-in for kube proxy, and it uses this library. And once we have some confidence in this library, we can say, well, here we make the library switch to send XDS instead. And now your kube proxy can get even simpler.
Yeah, I'm not yet sure if XDS is going to simplify things, but it seems that the idea around XDS stuff, especially the selection, arbitrary label selection and things like that, they were trying to put that as a library that could be consumed by the proxy. And I'm not sure the proxy itself is really well suited as a library. I've kind of done something that's communicating inside the process, but it's really like just I'm doing that to do a library, but it's kind of forcing the library shape on something that's a real decoupled API. So I'm not sure there's a real interest in making it a library, but it can be done.
Can you do it as a drop-in replacement? So I mean, if I have your new kube proxy and I just replace the binary of the current kube proxy, it will work.
We could try to do that. There's already some, I think there's already some problems with that, because in the proxy there are lots of configuration for IP tables and lots of other configurations for IPVS, and you have to choose. And I don't know if it's really what people want.
I don't think in that case it would be a literal drop-in, but it like modulo the configuration. So if you erase the configuration, it could be a functional drop-in. But what I think we'd want to do is not build a monolithic thing that has IPVS and users mode and IP tables, but like let's call this KP2, right? So I build KP2 IPT, and KP2 IPT is the IP tables main. I have a program which is my main. I call libkpt and I pass it an interface, and KP2 rather, sorry. We need a better name. This library or whatever takes over and effectively becomes the new main, right? But it calls out to me and I have the IP tables logic. So now if I want to run an IP tables mode, I deploy that onto my nodes. And if I want to run an IPVS mode, it's a different binary.
Yes, but we already have the, you can see my screen again?
Yeah.
Okay, so the way it's done already allows some separation, as I have really the proxy itself, this is one pod, just one pod. The idea was to use two containers. Both are the kube proxy, but one is just bringing up the API itself. That will listen on a Unix socket, so it's a local file. And you have an ftable thing, for instance, that's here. And this one gets the capabilities for net administration and its own flags. Well, I have dry run, but I also have things like skip comments, and we could have some IP and ftable specific things just as flags of the SQL binary. And I think it's still pretty simple to understand and to modify. That's why I'm a bit skeptical on the usefulness of the library style.
The only reason I think a library is if I'm going to try to debug this thing, it'll be easier in the beginning if I have just a library. But also I'm wary of, if we ever want to do XDS, of trying to support a thing that converts via a protocol to another thing which converts to a protocol, if that makes sense.
For XDS, yes, I'm not yet sure where it would fit. If we want to, because we have that kind of global data around the cluster and the local node data that's simplified. And so I'd say if we have XDS, there will probably be something near the Kubernetes API that will convert that to XDS data. And then XDS will handle the transport. And then we'll convert that back to the local node interface with something that wouldn't be kubeproxy to here. It would be XDS to kubeproxy local net or something. That would then allow to use the same programs afterward.
Sam, when you say plugin, are you saying plugin as in encode plugin or plugin as in loadable binary of some sort? I'm asking
it's just another process that's connecting to the socket, and so we end up by providing an API over some network connection. Yeah, so when I say plugin, it's more like things connecting to this socket.
It wouldn't be hard if you started with the library thing and then you moved to the socket stuff later, right? If you wanted, that would be an easy transition to make, right?
I actually started as more or less as a library, but it felt like it was easier to make an API or clear, because you can also start your logs, reports, and you can assemble things live. I don't know, for debugging it seems easier, but it can be done. I structured the code quite a lot, so it's quite easy to plug things in and do whatever you want.
What I'm trying to hint at is I love the plugin model for reasons that includes that CNI people can build their own plugins that either meet the entire feature set or just implement parts of it. Let's say somebody does offload in a certain way. Somebody comes and do XDB. Somebody finds a certain network card that does something funky and all of that. The thing I see was obviously not what I see is very cool. Thank you very much for that. The problem I have with sockets in between the two layers is we introduced a new set of failure modes, right? One of them can fail and then debugging becomes interesting. In addition to a new set of challenges around building and shipping and all that. But arguably building and shipping is one-time problem and you can safely solve it. The failure modes of one container restart in the middle of request becomes a total new failure mode that we did not deal with. So that's why I was asking, can we do something around loadable plugins? I know Go doesn't support that except in WASM right now, as far as I know. Maybe somebody knows some details. But the idea of, I want to stitch a proxy that consists of some parts from this person and some other parts from that person, to me, it sounds appealing, especially as we move on to edge networking and all of the things that we expect in the future.
So Go does support loadable plugins, but the restrictions are so draconian as to make it useless. They have to be compiled with the exact same compiler version and the same exact version of every common dependency. So it's just not useful. It's not useful unless you're building them yourself, right? We should probably move on the agenda. I'm super happy with the way this is proceeded. I think we should think hard about how we want to evolve this and where we want to ultimately end up. I admit that I'm partial to library as a model intermediate because it's simple to debug, and because I'm wary of trying to understand two protocols on network and having to debug through that. But I won't say that I'm completely 100% locked into that.
Okay. Anyway, it can be done. It's already stores that are in B trees, and the store is already thread safe, so it can be done.
And where is the code for this linked in the KEP?
Yeah, it's linked in the KEP, and I can put it on the.
Should we make a SIGs repo for this? Like, do you want to? Let me back up. Is it your intention to contribute this to Kubernetes entirely?
Yeah, entirely. Yeah.
Okay, so perhaps we should open a ticket to make a new SIGs repo, and you could actually move it with the history into a Kubernetes SIGs repo so that we have a CLA in place so that everybody can contribute if they want to.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to do that?
Yep.
Go to the Kubernetes org, or is it org? There's a repo that is for the GitHub org admins to create a new repo for you.
Okay, so it's like a pull request in this repo to get the.
Exactly. I forget the exact name of the repo now, but
Kubernetes/org. That's
okay. There it is. Yes. Yeah, I think you just make a pull request in that repo, and one of us signs off on it as a SIG approver, and you get a repo under Kubernetes SIGs.
Okay.
Now you have to come up with a clever name. kubeproxy2 is not a clever name.
That's the kubeproxy.
I was kind of feeling KP2 though.
KP2?
It's got like a Star Wars droidy kind of feel to it.
Or a virus name. It looks like a virus name, man. It's like one of those 28 Days Later movies, like KP2 virus.
Yeah, it's got that.
Is it like NG?
Just some kind of hip about it. I like it.
So it's KP2.
Well, let's not stifle our creativity. But
that's right.
Yeah.
Feel free to brainstorm on it a little bit. When we open the issue on that org, you can we can come up with some clever names. Okay. Oh, there's thanks, Rob.
I start with next gen.
Awesome. All right. So did you have anything else?
Yeah, there's another topic
okay.
on cluster scoped network policy, which is a big one.
Yeah, so I put in that, and hey everyone. So I think some of you are already aware that we've been collecting network policy related use cases in the network policy subgroup. And some of us within that group has been looking at introducing an admin focused resource to complement the network policies at cluster scope. And so let's call it cluster network policy. So we recently presented our proposal to the network policy subgroup, and we got some feedback, and we incorporated the feedback into our presentation. And now I think we are in a shape to present it to the larger audience, to the SIG network community. So what we would probably need is about 2 30-minute time slots in back-to-back SIG network meetings, or I don't know how you want to do it. But we would need a chunk of time to present the proposal to all of you guys, and we'll send a slide deck and documents on the mail thread, so that anyone who is interested can read it beforehand. And so basically today we are looking for some sort of a direction as to how we move forward.
I think you just I don't think we have any precedent for guaranteeing slots other than signing up for the agenda. So if you have the agenda doc, you can sign up for Jan 21 already, and you put yourself on there. Mark that you want a full 30 minutes so that we can keep track of that. And then you can even add a block above for Jan 20 or whatever, February 4th or whatever that would be.
Okay. All right, we'll do that. And Gobind, did you want to add anything else?
Oh no, I think that's great. We can just add ourselves to the agenda, and we can also link the presentation in there. So if people are they wanted to see the deck beforehand and come prepared with questions, I think that'd be great. But yeah, we're very excited to present this to you. Also, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Cool. I just added one for Feb 4 as well. So early bird gets the worm, I guess. Tim, you were the last on the list for namespace labels.
Yeah, I wanted to just hand the floor to Jay to tell us where are we with that proposal around namespace name labels.
Oh yeah, I think it's all, I was just waiting for it to merge so we could iterate on like whatever's left. I don't think there's anything contentious. I figured Liget was just underwater from Christmas. So I just stopped asking. I stopped pinging, but I can check again. I didn't.
I think he mentioned something about adding beta proposals for that. I didn't quite understand. I thought we would either do alpha or we directly go to GA. I didn't get what we mean by beta.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like where it landed was that it was just kind of like we all kind of agreed on it and we're going to merge and iterate because there's so many comments. It wasn't even, but I can, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't clear to me whether it was actually needed an alpha beta at all or whether it would just go straight to GA. I know I initially was pushing really hard for being kind about it, but Jordan sort of talked me out of it.
Yeah, so I just figured I didn't want to spam anybody because it was Christmas. But
well, that's very nice
to start spamming again.
Very polite. It's not Christmas anymore. I'm giving people this week, and then I'll start spamming people next week.
Okay.
But for what it's worth, people are spamming me already, so it's fine.
Okay, maybe it's not too early to start. I like to harass people, so I'm fine with it.
Can I spam people for the import one, team?
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna start spamming people also.
I mean, my thing is, I was talking to Ricardo about this. We would like to merge these together so we can have a nice story about here. The API just has these 2 new things now in this new release, as opposed to titrating them in randomly, and we're going to have to check out CNI providers. Yeah,
I understand that, but I like Ricardo's change is going to need to go alpha because it's a new field, and this one maybe doesn't. So they're going to appear more randomly to users. Like I wouldn't sit on this for 2 quarters until the new field is beta, right? I would just get the namespaces one in as soon as possible. It's part of one larger narrative, but the timing won't line up.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay, cool. All right, so I'll start pushing on it again. Is there anyone other than Liget who can do the final LGTM who's been active on it?
I don't know who feels like they own namespaces. So maybe the question for Liget is, if you don't want to approve this, who do you want to approve it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Cool. All right. I will just make sure that there's not some minor detail that I missed that he's waiting for, and then I will start asking him.
Okay.
I'll update in Slack next week if I see anything.
Sounds good.
Cool. Well, I think that is a wrap then. Unless there are any last minute things anybody wanted to bring up.
Just for the knowledge, Manuel is stepping down from Ingress controller ownership. I don't know if you all are aware of that. So I think this is something that we need to take a look and take care, probably, because this is the Ingress controller that most folks that are not in cloud providers use.
Yeah, good point. Thank you for bringing that up. Alejandro pinged me this morning. He's been struggling to keep his head above water with all the work between a real job and Ingress Nginx maintainership. He hasn't really gotten anybody who stepped up to take on a substantial amount of that work. And so he's planning to just step down unilaterally, which leaves the project more or less unmaintained, unless somebody or buddies want to step up to maintain it. As a community, I think it's an important project. I don't personally have time to help right now.
Sorry, I missed a little bit. You were talking about the Ingress Nginx thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up as well. I'm going to try to reach out to Manuel. I also reached out to, I don't know how to pronounce it, Elfin. We're the two of us are the only other reviewers left on the project aside from Bowie. I'm not sure if Bowie had any interest.
I would be surprised, knowing all the things that Bowie's got on his plate. Yeah, I'd be surprised. This is the real fun part of the open source community, right? We've all leaned on Alejandro for a long time on this project. It's an important project. It needs some help. So I'm sure he would be happy to see anybody who wants to help step up. We don't need people to volunteer here and now, but do think about it, especially those of you who work at big companies that tend to use Kubernetes, and think if you can help maintain this important project.
What if you're at a big company that has their own load balancer?
Well, I think you're probably in the same boat that a lot of us are, which is it's a really cool project, but I can't maintain it on company time, and my private time is relatively limited now.
This is one of the statements that Tim throws looking at the camera, but he's actually looking at few people in mind. I know exact look, so I promise I'll try to find some help on this, but I can't promise an answer yet. So yeah, I think we should be able to help.
Cool, great.
Cool.
Yeah, Ricardo's comment, I agree completely. Bandwidth is just low all around. There's so many cool things going on here. We all have to be judicious about how we spend our time and not kill ourselves.
Yep. Well, with that in mind, I will see you all in 2 weeks. We're a minute over, so I don't want to take anybody else's limited bandwidth.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, folks.
See you all.
Bye-bye.